Here we are in the Madison Valley, Montana, and you're looking at the headwaters of the Missouri River system. If you're a fly fisherman and you're coming from St. Louis, you'll know the Missouri, you'll know the Madison, you'll know the Yellowstone. But what feeds these big rivers are all the little creeks. There's a web of life that is generated by the thousands of little creeks in the headwaters.
When we looked at the Madison, it's easy to get distracted by the main stem river because it's such a beautiful, compelling feature in the valley. But when you take a step back and when you're trying to think holistically about issues like climate change and how they impact this whole watershed, you have to look at things like tributaries and how they affect the main stem. What we're really aiming for long term is from mountaintop to valley bottom, a system of lands that are able to adapt and be resilient to changes over time in climate.
In 1983, the Greater Yellowstone Coalition was founded on a simple premise. An ecosystem will remain healthy only if it is kept whole. For more than 30 years, they have worked to protect the 20 million acres of wild country that make up the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, one of the largest, nearly intact temperate ecosystems left on Earth.
Greater Yellowstone Coalition convened a gathering around climate change in Greater Yellowstone, and we pulled all of our partners from across the region together for a day to look at the best available science on climate for our region. So that meant a lot of conversations with folks in the academic world, the good people at the Wildlife Conservation Society, and elsewhere to basically help inform us.
It is a big area, and there are many things we could be doing, and we could certainly recommend Greater Yellowstone Coalition or others to be doing. But the value of doing on-the-ground, long-term research helps filter all those choices down to what are the most important areas, what are the most important issues. We have identified both the importance of the Madison Valley and the connection that the Madison Valley provides between Greater Yellowstone and the rest of the Northern Rockies, but in particular looking at the importance of riparian corridors and riparian habitats in that context.
We had 3 different watersheds in the region that we had kind of zeroed in on. We made the final call by looking at 2 factors. One was where the science was telling us we needed to go, and the second was where do we have the right people on the ground to go and actually implement what we want to do? Where do we have the right relationships and stakeholders and potential partners to go make it happen?
After careful consideration, the Greater Yellowstone Coalition created a pilot project ensuring the functionality of riparian corridors in the Madison Valley. These include projects on 3 tributary streams, the West Fork of the Madison, Horse Creek, and Ruby Creek.
Restoration is primarily to provide nature with the opportunity to do the work that it normally does. Ruby Creek is a primary example of a system that can function properly with help.
One of the reasons we're concerned about those tributaries and climate change is we're losing the snowpack. The snowpack is melting sooner and sooner in the spring. It's arriving later and later in the fall. One of the reasons that we want to focus on riparian restoration is the ability to store the water that we have, make the best use of that water that we have when we have it, so that we can continue to maintain these habitats in the same quality they are now.
So the grizzly bears that live up in those mountains, they have to use these riparian corridors to get to different ranges. And they utilize these same locations, these pathways that the fish use. In our pilot program, we're showing that these functions, these actions to maintain these habitats work across the whole valley.
One of the strange things about climate change is that all of a sudden it makes you think about this place that you love long after you're gone, and what it's likely to be like, and especially a place like Yellowstone, and how special it is for millions of people across the world. But then for me and my family and for my kids, it's motivation to make sure that we get this right. And so I feel like the Climate Adaptation Fund is an incredible catalyst for where I hope we're all going as a movement and making climate change just a part of our work.